Welcome to the Mockingcast, the podcast of Mockingbird Ministries. I'm David Zoll, your host, and in a few moments, I'll be joined by my co-hosts, Sarah Condon and RJ Heyman. We come to you every other week to discuss a few of the places where we currently see grace and its absence playing out in unexpected and compelling ways. We're glad to have you with us.
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. God.
Hello, my friends. I'm so happy to be with you here at the end of October, beginning of November. We took a week off there to accommodate my schedule this time. Thank you for doing that, and thank you, listeners, for your patience. Well, it was really, really nice trip, but also, every time you come back from a trip like that, you just feel a little discombobulated. So it's been good to be home, good to be back with the kids, and good to be getting ready for the Charlottesville conference. By the time this was the last episode we'll record before that happens. Sarah and I will be there. We've got a big crowd coming, but if you are planning to show up at any point, we do ask that you register. It's free for students. And if you're a student, seminary student, college student, high school student, it is free. We've never done that before, and as always, we might really regret it. But I'm glad we've been able to make that happen. It's not expensive.
That's
for
what
other
grace
folks
looks
too.
like sometimes. Yeah. So
Amen.
Sometimes you just really regret it. Yeah.
I'll include the link to registration in the show notes, but
I just imagine Jesus Easter morning be like, not worth it.
Listen.
Won't do that again.
I didn't know this was what was going to happen.
Exactly. I didn't realize I was descending to hell.
bad idea genes.
Yeah.
So that's me. I got more to say, but let's hear from the two of you. What's been going on? We're recording this the day before All Hallows Eve.
Oh,
So
Reformation Day.
Yeah, there's lots happening here with the trunk or treats and the actual trick or treating, and Sarah likes she likes her a good trick or treat. I know that.
I love Halloween. It's like my favorite thing in the whole planet.
What are you
So-
guys being for Halloween? Do you dress up still?
I don't know, because like I'm going to be
Lame.
running after little girls like trick-or-treating. I'm like responsible for other people's children. No, but Annie's
you
It's all
can't do that in a
downhill.
costume,
It's
is
all
that-
I'm not
downhill
going to do that in a
from Sarah's
costume.
Bob's
All right.
Burgers
All
here.
right.
That was
I know. It's like I never want to do anything other than Bob's Burgers, and so I'm not gonna do that. That's hard because I have to wear red plastic glasses that I can't see out of. So I don't want to run after children in that
Okay,
costume.
fair enough.
Yeah, I'm just excited about Halloween. I love that it's on a Friday night. We're
Perfect.
gonna have a Halloween sleepover at our house afterwards. So, and the 14-year-old I think is going to see one of his friends play in a band at a skating rink, which is the most 14-year-old boy thing ever. And I'm so excited
Living the
for
dream.
him to do that. Yeah. So, yeah, and I sing in the choir at our church because I clearly just want to have things going on all the time. And my favorite service we do at St. B's is All Saints. It's incredible. It is so beautiful.
Wow.
It's so meaningful. There's like a whole thing with bells where you go up and you kneel and you ring a bell for every person that you want to remember. It's just
Cool.
gorgeous. So I'm really excited for Sunday night for that too.
glad to hear it.
It's gonna be good.
The Heyman family often posts pictures or sends Christmas cards of themselves dressed up as the cast of Anchorman.
Yeah,
or
you guys
We go hard.
mean it.
you
We
go hard.
big.
Yeah.
We
What's happening
do.
this year? What is
We're
it?
doing like a full kind of anime theme because
Love it.
Marshall is Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen, which I don't watch.
Love it.
So then I was told that I was going to be Luffy from One Piece. No idea who that is.
Okay.
But I rocked it at our trunk or treat last week. All the adults were disturbed. All the teenagers loved it.
I bet. All right.
So
bet.
am I going to do that again tomorrow night? I don't know. We'll see. And then Jamie is Pikachu. So
Oh my
that's kind of
God.
what we were, what we might be tomorrow night. Well, I don't know if I have the courage to wear the outfit again. We'll see. But it is amazing. I'll say every time you go to Goodwill, I'm like, will I be able to pull together this outfit? And I just happened to find the perfect red Tommy Hilfiger like women's sport coat with the right buttons that was just the perfect,
This is amazing, RJ.
It was. I'm going to show you the picture. No one can see it online unless we decide to Instagram this. But here was.
I think this is the
I
clip.
think we're
Yeah, I
Instagramming
think.
this, yes.
Oh my God, you look awesome,
That's great.
that was me. But there you go. That's in honor
Dave.
of the 95 Theses. Dave, what are you doing for
Garbage
Halloween?
Pail Kid? What are you doing this year?
Yeah,
I just applaud everyone who dresses up at my age. I don't actually do it,
you
but
guys, I'm really disappointed in you.
I'm
You
a
should
listen.
be.
I'm a
I'm totally
Halloween
disappointed.
booster. I'll be
Are you?
there watching the horror films. I'll be. I have one son going as Michael Myers, much to his mother's chagrin, but it was he kind of bartered for it over the years. And like when I turned 13, can I please go as Michael Myers? And he's never even seen these movies, but he knows how to play the Halloween theme on the piano, and he knows he can freak out his younger brother if he does that. So we have one who's the greatest showman, and Tommy's going to be a conductor and gonna the whole 9 yards, and we have one who's going to be a serial killer. So that's
amazing.
that's happening in our world.
And that's where, that's gives you a really clear picture, probably. So yeah.
There was an article I saw yesterday about how apparently Halloween costumes have gotten a lot more gory recently, like a lot more. So are you going all in? Will there be, is there lots of
true?
blood and stuff?
Because I'm sorry, but the 80s
I don't
were
know
pretty
if it is. I'm
scary.
just
I don't know
asking.
if that's
I saw an
true.
article. It's on
I'll
the
just
internet.
say
It must
this.
be true.
One of like the empty, it used to be maybe Ulta or something like that. It's empty and it becomes a Halloween Starts Here shop. And my kids love to go, to, like September 1st it opens, and you go in there and the amount of animatronics they have ready to frighten the bejesus out of you has increased threefold since even last year.
Yeah.
And so it is quite a frightening experience. I mean, I think that the acceleration or innovation around Halloween statues, these 24-foot tall skeletons and stuff like that, I happen to think it's pretty fun. I guess it borders into the occult at sometimes, but for the most part, injecting
You're on board.
Enchantment and horror into everyday life, a little escapism, in fact, I think is pretty cool. And so the fact that you sometimes drive around a corner in some dark neighborhood and there's 4 giants, staring at you, it makes life a little more interesting, especially if you're a person in your car a lot. But the other thing I'd mentioned about I wrote about it, and I know we talked about it briefly, but just to highlight for our listeners, this show Task that just finished, I think it's worth mentioning. We talked about the end of Fargo season 5 a couple of years ago, and every few years, one of these cultural artifacts just comes. It sort of hits the sweet spot of grace and forgiveness, but with real stakes, and also told and produced in an extremely high quality way. And I can recommend it. I think Task was a beautiful. It's by Brad Oglesby, who also did Mayor of Easttown. So if you saw that show, you know that if he's
not a Christian, he's real close.
Oh, he says his uncle is an Augustinian monk.
Oh wow!
And it's very church friendly, but in a non-flaky way.
Yes,
at all.
In a very authentic way.
And the same young woman who's in that was in Coda, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So everyone in the show, outside of Mark Ruffalo and the Stephen Pelfrey, who the 2 leads, everyone is English, and so or British, and so you can see the behind the scenes footage, and every single person is not from America, but they're speaking with these Delco accents, and it's hilarious to me. I don't know what exactly is going on. Are they getting around some kind of like union stipulation, or is it just that the British are much better? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's you guys be the judge, but let's start with a piece called "It's Right Up Our Alley." When did everything become so intentional? This is by Marie Salas in the New York Times, and she's surveying the trend about that's very popular on TikTok, but other places as well, about intentional dating, intentional shopping,
intentionality.
Intentional drinking, or intentional, it's blossomed, and it's kind of everywhere. And she notes how marketers have picked it up, that Hailey Bieber's billion-dollar beauty brand Rhode has advertised itself as a line of, quote, intentional skincare and beauty essentials. Again, I don't know what an unintentional line of skincare and beauty essentials would be, but this is
oil of Olay.
Yeah.
This is what she writes. She said, living intentionally suggests being present and self-aware. Your words and actions are in near perfect alignment. Being intentional also implies a series of deliberate choices. Those can feel hard to come by these days when even mundane, everyday decisions appear more readily shaped by faceless algorithms than by any sort of individual volition. One can't help but feel that the word expresses a wider feeling of being disempowered and adrift, sort of sunk in a sinkhole of brain rot online or something. The word is an assertion of free will, as well as a cushion against all of the unpredictable facets of life. How infinitely understandable, then, if occasionally irritating, to be hearing this word so often. More annoying is that the word can't bring about all it seems to promise, writes Solis. She interviews a Seattle-based therapist named Dr. Yushin Sun, who says, I understand why people want that sense of safety and control. I would also say that, essentially, as human beings, we don't have the ability to set intentions so good, to make decisions so good, that we're immune from heartbreak, pain, sickness, and all the difficulties in life. It's a fascinating article, and she polls all these mental health professionals who are a little baffled about where this word intentional came from, because all of their clients are talking about how they want to go about such and such a thing intentionally. And it's not coming from the research or the modalities that people learned in graduate school. And I laughed as a Christian because I think if you search the word for intentional on Amazon, it's nothing but Christian books and sort of leadership books. Intentionality is like a euphemism for law, oftentimes in the sort of evangelical and post-evangelical world. And I've heard this word intentional nonstop. So it's like one of these rare cases of like, I think the pollination coming from like the Christian or sort of evangelical world and filtering into the culture rather than vice versa. But she shows all of these different examples of intentionally cleaning up, intentional morning routines, stuff like that. What do you think about this? Is this something you see?
For me, it just feels like a different way of talking about sin and not really talking about sin, and also not saying like, actually, like, and none of this shit works. I've tried it. I have an app on my phone that keeps me off of social media, and I beat it all the time. You know what I mean? Like I go right around it. So like
You intentionally avoid the intentional app.
Yeah. For me, it just always goes back to your dad, Dave, and just like, and I've been thinking a lot about batteries not included because I want to talk about it at Charlottesville, but just like help has to come from the outside. Like us trying to be intentional is just such nonsense in a lot of ways. It like has to come from the outside. It has to be the Holy Spirit. It has to be through desperation on some level, like for us to, it just has to come from the outside. I don't know. I just get over it. It's also like, I saw something the other day. I don't even remember what it was, but something to do with being pregnant and trying to like not use any toxic blah, blah, blahs. And I'm like, girl, the baby comes out toxic. Like, that's how babies come. They're toxic. I don't know if you've met one, but they're disgusting. Like, it's like all this control and intentionality that it just makes me think, like, what are we avoiding? Like, what are we trying to use instead of filling this, like, just deep, profound, like, we're so afraid and we're so
Fear.
lonely.
Yeah.
And we just keep
Pain,
trying to, like,
fear.
fill it with all these
Yeah.
things except for, like, real community and real, like, oh my gosh, there's
Intentional community. That's like another word
Well,
for a
that's
commune.
that's what exactly where my mind went, Dave.
Go
Like, and that
for
was
it,
big.
RJ.
I don't. That's still big. I mean, that was big, like late '90s, early 2000s. About the time I was like in my 20s, and the idea was, if you don't know what intentional community is it still a thing? You know, a bunch of young people moving into sort of a house together, and they're going to live together and eat together and pray together and serve together. And at the and 6 months later, they want to kill each other because over salad dressing. You know, or something like, you use my salad dressing. It just never, because it doesn't work. You know, people are people, and it devolves. And Sarah, it's funny you talking about foods for kids, intentionality, because a Facebook memory popped up this morning from 9 years ago when my then 12-year-old fed my newborn. The first food he ever tasted was rainbow sherbet at 6 weeks old. because he was sitting with my son, and he was like, "Here, have some rainbow sherbet."
Mhm.
And my wife was like, "Oh, I was planning on his first food being organic vegetables 5 months
Yeah.
from now,
Yeah.
but now you just gave him some rainbow sherbet."
High fructose corn syrup.
And then the other thing Jamie said, apparently there was something about how peanut allergies are way, way down since parents were just like, we give up. We're going to give our kids nuts. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, they're probably not going to die. It's probably going to be okay.
Yeah.
And now it's like, the major thought I had, though, was I think I'm wary of intentionality because I'm sort of scared that any choice I make intentionally is probably the wrong choice. And so much of my life has been unintentional. We got pregnant with our first son and our third son unintentionally. Most of the moves I've made in my life have been unintentional. I met my wife unintentionally in co-check line. So I'm actually wrestling with, do I trust myself to make any kind of major intentional life choice, or am I just along for the ride?
Yeah.
And what do I actually trust more? I sort of trust being along for the ride a little bit more because maybe that's God. I mean, I know God works through everything, through our choices and through things that are not our choices. But yeah.
I remember my father always saying that, like, if my mother ever came to him and said, "Paul, I really just want to be intentional with you about something," he would just, I'm gonna run for the hills. Like, please don't ever say that to me, even if you're feeling it, if you've got something you need to say. I do think that it's a euphemism for control and law. And I like how she does frame it in terms of people are feeling like their lives are being dictated by these forces that they have, over which they have no control, especially the algorithms. Their anger and their just time suck, the sort of sitting down and realizing, oh, I've been scrolling through AI videos of people getting upset at airports or something like that, and wanting to avoid that, or the feeling that alienated from oneself in that regard. I get that it is a measure of pain, the intentional thing. It's just that this is one situation where I think some of the Christians might really do have something to say. It's like this intentional stuff is
we've tried it.
Beware.
We've tried it, and it presumes a level of agency that people simply do not have.
Yeah.
And hold it extremely lightly. It was funny though. Both of you guys talked about it in terms of parenting. I had one day of total whiplash where I went to one birthday party, sort of that was in Charlottesville. That was very bohemian, and it was like there was no high fructose corn syrup snacks. Everything was organic. Like the food tasted like cardboard, and the kids were sort of trying to have fun, like it was a high control environment though, but for very certain controlled variables. And then I went to another one at a sort of a homeschooled family who was very concerned about Halloween, and they were, highly controlled about what their children were being exposed to. And in both cases, I thought to myself, as you said, Sarah, it's like, guys, I'm so sorry. It's already inside them. Like it's, you of course you want to protect your children from the things, and it's still good values, yada, yada, yada. But this idea that as a parent, my job is to just keep the world, these toxic influences at bay so that I can sort of encourage the purity within is just, it's a fiction. I mean, it's not right. It's out of touch with what people are like, with what you yourself are like. It's born out of fear. It's born out of pain. It's born out of tragedy sometimes. But
I mean, as you said, as Christians, we've tried it. It didn't work.
Well, there is a level of intentionality, as you know, that does sort of come out of catastrophe sometimes when you've experienced, when you are an alcoholic, or you're battling depression, or your marriage is on the rocks, or but it tends to be kind of a death and a resurrection type thing. I think. I mean, that seems morbid, but I don't know. I do just think that transformation happens through suffering and catastrophe by the grace of God
and love.
Yeah,
but I mean, love in the midst of
love. Love in the midst of it. Well, love showing up in the midst of it. That's exactly right. Sorry. Yes.
I feel like there's so much to be said about this. When you say that, RJ, it makes me think about people who are children of alcoholics and how often there's like when they have their own kids, there's this like, and this was definitely true of my parents because my dad's dad was such an alcoholic, but this like, we're not going to do that, right? We won't be that way, a real intentionality. But it just turned into sort of another darkness because dad just wasn't willing to go to therapy and sit there with somebody and say, I was really scared as a kid. My dad was an alcoholic, which was like really what needed to happen. So like, it feels for me like, yes, there's some positives about being intentional, but there's a lot of work. Like there's actually like self-reflection and dealing with your own sin and dealing with things that have happened to you that has to happen first. It's not just an app.
Family disease.
Yeah.
Yeah. And oftentimes when we talk about, I want us to have an intentional Friday night. It's usually mean I want to control our Friday. I want to completely dictate what's going on. And that is,
in our family, if someone says that, I'm like, well, we're definitely going to fight. You know, like somebody's going to get in a fight. Like that's, if
someone's
we're trying,
plans are about to get
my God,
ruined.
are we having a game night? It's over. Yeah, it's over. So, yeah.
Well, let's move into this next piece, which has a little bit to do with what we've just talked about. It's called The Perks of Morbid Curiosity by Colton Scrivener in The Atlantic. Morbid entertainment is a massive industry, he writes. Scary movies are box office winners, and true crime podcasts consistently rank at the top of the charts. A nice scare can be a thrill, but why are so many of us compelled to seek out fear and anxiety when we're already living in such stressful times? Well, Colton writes, I've spent years exploring why people are so intrigued by the macabre, including horror films, haunted houses, conspiracy theories, and true crime. I call this phenomenon morbid curiosity. My research at the Recreational Fear Lab in Denmark, just send it over to the Recreational Fear Lab, suggests that not only that frightening stories and scary activities can temporarily distract us from the terrors of the real world, but that they might actually make us more resilient to the stressors that we face. A good scare could even help us fight anxiety. And then he lists a bunch of research, but in 2020 and 2021, the horror genre as a whole accelerated its ascent in terms of market share. And on the surface, the impulse to terrorize ourselves in already terrifying times, it seems counterintuitive, but it jibes with what many horror fans have accidentally discovered and been discussing online for years, that scary, safe experiences appear to have some calming effects. Morbidly curious people were, especially during COVID, more resilient to the uncertainty of the pandemic than others, and more confident in their ability to get through the difficult times. Likewise, horror fans weren't experiencing the same spike in anxiety, irritability, and sleeplessness that those who didn't watch slasher films or paranormal flicks have. My theory for these findings is that engaging with fictional scenarios of danger lets us safely experience fear and anxiety and become better at regulating those negative emotions. Then when real danger presents itself, we feel prepared, if not for the specific scenario, at least for the feelings it unleashes. Otherwise put, scary, safe experiences serve as a kind of exposure therapy, getting us more comfortable with being uncomfortable. And he closes by saying that the key to using horror for healing appears to be getting the fear factor just right. My colleagues and I have found that most people have a fear sweet spot of about a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10. Too much fear isn't fun, but too little is boring. So for some people, that means making a scary experience more extreme, for instance, watching a spooky movie with all the lights out. For others, they downregulate their fear by covering their eyes when faced with jump scares and gore. So morbid curiosity, it extends not just to horror, Michael Myers films, but it does extend to the true crime thing, I think, which is a huge cash cow right now. But do you guys see this? Are you morbidly curious? Or?
I think I've talked about this before. I really became a horror fan after my parents died. And there's so much brain research about why that is a very common thing. Because when you're in deep grief, horror is one of those things that is so pronounced that it gives your brain a break from the grief because it's so all-consuming. And my favorite movie, maybe of all time, that I could watch every week, but no one ever wants to watch it with me, is Midsummer. Have you guys seen? God, that's such a good movie. I love that movie so much. What is not to love about that movie? You know,
I haven't seen it. I can't go there.
Both her parents die in the first 5 minutes. Chef's kiss. And then she's showing up at all these. I was like, "Is this me?" And then she's showing up at all these party, I remember she's at this party, and like no one understands like what's happening with her, like because she's in such deep grief. I'm like, check, and then she gets to go like be the queen of this bizarre cult, and I could not love Midsummer more. And
Interesting.
and I know that's really disturbing
Is it
for
really
people.
scary? Is it super scary?
It's super disturbing, is what I would say. It's
disturbing.
super, super, super disturbing.
Okay.
You have to watch it, RJ.
Do I? Okay.
Same guy who did Eddington.
But
Yeah.
I felt so much better when I read Rob Delaney's book about his son dying, because he talks about Midsummer in the same way in his book, about when his toddler, precious baby boy was dying of cancer, how he went to see Midsummer, and it came as relief. It came as a break. And I think for those of us who like have experienced real horror, there's something in it that like feels like, it's almost like, I remember my therapist saying, when you're really afraid of something, you should in your mind watch it like on a TV screen, like it's a TV show, because it gives you some separation from it, enough to see it for what it really is. And I think with horror, it's just like you're getting to literally watch on a screen. I just this makes me feel more normal to hear this. It's just very helpful. And I was not a person that could watch anything scary before they died. And now it's like, bring it on.
RJ clearly is not in that same camp. I mean, I'm
not.
with Sarah on a lot of this stuff.
I mean, I watched 28 years later recently. That's about as scary as I want to get. I do think I do the same thing though with like very emotionally intense, sort of probably more tragic, television shows and movies. So maybe not horror, but tragedy. And I would with catharsis, and there's always, I would imagine there's always catharsis in horror movies too. And I would put sort of Task and Mayor of Easttown in kind of that category. People living very intense, honest, tragic lives. I find that to be very helpful to me personally, just to take myself out of my own space, give me something to way to work out my own stuff. I always cry in movies. Marshall's like, "Dad, what is wrong with you?" I get so embarrassed when I cry, but I can't help it. That's helpful to me. But horror, I don't know.
It's too much.
Well, I mean, you'd like
Not
the
for
true
me.
crime stuff. I just sent you that Malcolm Gladwell, the Alabama murders thing, which is about a pretty grisly murder, and
it's getting to be a bit much now. And they're gonna. I haven't made it through the episode. I think they're going to talk about a botched execution. I'm not sure I want to listen to that. We'll see.
I'm at that point
I
too.
can't do true crime. For me, that feels very different from horror.
Oh.
There's like real people. Like, I can't with that. That's too much for me. I don't know
Shout
why.
out for that podcast in which there's really significant discussion about grace and the gospel in like episode 2, and about a man who's trapped in a very oppressive,
Episode 1,
legalistic episode 1 religious tradition and what it drives him to. Like
and specifically, they talk about the absence of grace, like
very specifically
what happens in a church context when grace
it's pretty
is
amazing,
basically suppressed. Like grace is actively like the enemy.
And then another character, who spends a lot of time with inmates on death row, and that's a real just huge shot of, and another a Christian, huge shot of grace. So it's a pretty powerful show.
I find watching horror movies to be cathartic and reducing of anxiety rather than. I'm not married to someone who feels that way for certain. Like, but she also can't seem to get enough of this true crime stuff. So I often wonder,
my wife too.
What is it? Is it kind of she sort of says it's partly just curiosity, and maybe not morbid curiosity, but certainly it is a curiosity. Like, I can't look away. What did that person do, kind of thing. But I think that when there's a resolve to it, there's maybe a safety that is you kind of come back to scary safe experience, which I think is a good way to put it. Maybe that's what we experience sometimes when we preach the gospel, a scary safe experience.
Yeah.
But talking about a real life sort of horror such situation, Jason Micheli wrote the wildest story for Mock this week, a true story from 2016. He talked about being called over to a neighbor's house for an exorcism. And Jason is a Methodist pastor. I think this wasn't necessarily his comfort zone, but he talks about going over there, meeting this couple. They were not churchgoers, but they just moved into this house a month previous, and their dog had been going nuts the entire time. They hadn't been able to sleep. They'd been at each other's throats like never before. And they had, in fact, just had to go to a hotel to get some rest. And so when Jason shows up, Libby, the woman, the wife here, says, "Do you really believe in evil spirits?" And Jason says, "Well, Karl Barth called demons exponents of falsehood." "Karl who?" she said. "Oh, it doesn't matter," he responded. Libby collapsed onto the sofa. "We've tried everything," she said, exhausted tears leaking from the corner of her eyes. "Well, what all have you tried?" I asked, genuinely curious. The husband said, "Well, we took down all the curtains. We read more light could introduce positive energy into the space. And we tried one of those Tibetan singing bowls, the metal ones that make a sound when you strike it. We sprinkled salt
The
in all
demon
the
was
rooms."
like, "This is such a good song."
I read that it helped, but it didn't. "I even snuck into a Catholic church near my office and stole a sandwich baggie of holy water from whatever you call it. Then we tried crystals from that New Age shop in Old Town. 2 days ago, we burnt sage and smudged the whole house with it, but all it accomplished was setting off the fire alarm. We can't afford to move. Nothing has worked." And Jason says, "Well, have you tried praying?" They both blushed. "Praying? To who?
That's
To what?
insane.
Like to God?" "No, we're not believers. We're not religious. We're atheists, in fact. Christianity always struck me as superstitious. We both have graduate degrees. The idea of asking a deity to intervene for you, it seems silly, doesn't
That's
it?"
my
No
favorite
offense.
part. We both have graduate degrees. Since you're the edge every time.
Jason
But
says,
we bought crystals.
Let me get
Yeah.
this straight. You've been banging away on a metal bowl like a hippie yoga instructor who lives in a souped-up van on the beach, and you've been burning sagebrush like a bona fide Babylonian pagan. But prayer strikes you as a bridge too far?" Eric, the husband, reluctantly nodded. "Okay, I can try to help," Jason said. "Well, what are you going to do?" Eric asked. "I'm going to pray," I said. "That's it?" Eric asked, panicked, like I didn't understand the severity of their desperation. "Well, would you feel better if I showed up wearing a proton pack?" Jason said. Ha ha ha. But you're just going to pray? You're not going to do anything else?" Jason said, "Jesus promises I don't need to do anything else. And if Jesus is a liar, then we all have a much bigger problem than whatever ill spirit haunts your house."
Oof, ba-boom.
When we finally, they go on a tour of the house and Jason prays this prayer. When they finally made their way back to the family room foyer, Jason invited them to stand in the threshold of the front door. I closed the window on my phone. "I think you ought to pray now," Jason said. Eric all but convulsed at the notion and threw his hands behind his back. "Why me? We asked for an exorcist, not an evangelist," Eric reminded me in a customer service tone of voice. "I know," Jason said. "It's just that Jesus says some demons can only be driven out through prayer." "Okay, but why does it have to be us doing the praying?" he pushed back. "Well," Jason said, "that Jesus' point is not that prayer is the biggest weapon in the spiritual warfare arsenal. Christ's point is that the posture of humility necessary for prayer is how the demonic is driven away. We resist the devil by yielding to God." They both nodded, like they at least understood me. "Look," Jason said, "I can keep praying if that's what you really want, but the surest way for you to be set free is to say to God, 'Help me.' You've tried everything else. Why don't you just try taking Jesus at his word?" "But I don't even believe in Jesus," Eric said softly. "I didn't say try believing in Jesus. I said try believing Jesus.
so
Believe what he
good.
said, that there are some exponents of falsehood in this world that can only be exercised by the humility prayer requires." "We don't believe in God," Eric insisted. "Fine. Start there," Jason said. "Say to Jesus, 'Help my unbelief.'" "This is so embarrassing," Eric said, his voice shaking. Jason responded, "Well, that's exactly why it's guaranteed to work." Finally, Eric turned to me and said, "I don't know if it worked, but I feel like an incredible burden has been lifted from me." I nodded. Demons possess, Jesus frees. And Jason gives a lot of commentary. It's extremely well written and very funny, but it's very serious in the final regard. And eventually, this couple, surprise, surprise, they do make it to church. Their dog calms down, and I think they're able to achieve a level of peace. But
Plates stop flying out of the cupboards, and pictures
when he
stop
gets there,
falling, and
he talks
scratch
about
marks stop appearing on the walls.
he starts going. They go into a room where there are always scratch marks on the wall. It's you have to read it. I don't know what to say. It's always uncomfortable
It's
when we
wild.
talk such realities, but here we are. RJ, talk to us about it.
I was just blown away by its sort of the mixture of seriousness and levity and faith and challenge, but in a really helpful way, and just truth speaking. When you say exorcism, it sounds terrifying. It's like I got to have a degree. I've got to be qualified. I got to pray the right. If
I
I
need to be
don't, it might
Catholic.
It might turn on me. Exactly. I got to
Yeah.
have the right beads. And for him to just be like, Jesus says we just need to pray. And if he's lying, then we got much bigger problems. It's just so beautiful and such an example of the Holy Spirit working through somebody, just giving the words to say and guiding the whole process. And really, really beautiful.
Sarah, where does your head go?
I mean, I think we live in a really haunted place. I've talked about the land that our house is on before. It's Shaw's Hill, which was like one of the bloodiest battles in the Civil War. There was like a Confederate general, like even after they had the Confederates had surrendered, who they like pierced him to a tree, like through his middle, like right over there.
Mm-hmm.
And recently, we had a suicide on the hill, like 6 weeks ago. So our daughter heard the gunshot. Was that close by? And I really do. I know this makes me sound nuts. I think before my parents died, I would have been very hesitant to have moved here. Honestly, I would have been too freaked out by sort of the vibe. I mean, regularly we will drive past, which it's just like right over there. We will drive past it and there will be people in full Civil War era costumes, like reenacting stuff. That is a regular thing. And there's something about feeling very protected in the most, God willing, horrific thing we'll ever have to go through that made me feel safe about living here, and it made sense to me to live here. And I'll be honest, like when we looked at the house, and it was very evident that the people who lived here were believers, very faithful believers. That also was like a big comfort to me. So yeah, I love this. I will say I do love this because I think in a lot of circles, especially of like mainline white Protestantism, our line between heaven and earth, our line between the world that is seen and unseen is so strong. And, if you spend any time in any place else, like, Latin American literature or Catholicism, or, you find quickly that the line might not be as firm as you think it is. And I think that's much more real. And I so appreciate Jason's witness in this. Jason himself is no stranger to personal horror. And he's definitely somebody that when I get around Jason, I know that he is brave because of Jesus. So it makes a lot of sense to me that he would have written this and done this.
I think that's really well put. I'm more reminded of a couple years ago when Andy Root spoke at Mockingbird. He had done this, basically polled all of these like mainline kind of buttoned up Christians, people who formally would never want to go anywhere near a kind of exorcism, the thin places of the world. There's kind of demonology stuff and all of them. But then he asked them about their own spiritual experiences in life, and to a person, they all had some experience of like feeling like an angel was there, so that God was intervening, some sort of weird, almost spooky way in which they felt God's presence, or some set of circumstances. And he told in a couple of stories, but they all said that they hadn't told anyone about this. Like it was a source of embarrassment. Some of them had even rationalized it away, but they said, but there was this one time. And they were existing in a religious context in which he sort of said, if some of these people, if we could start to talk about these experiences a little more openly, that everyone seems to actually be having, but people are embarrassed to talk about, then maybe our wings of the church wouldn't feel so vanilla and kind of dead. Because everyone was having these experiences.
Yeah.
It was just absolutely wild to me, and I can list my own. So I'm glad to have this to point to. And of course the caveats apply. Like people are very I think prone to sort of blaming their own sin on, the devil made me do it, or, anything bad that happens. That I deny my culpability by talking about spiritual warfare, but that doesn't mean these sorts of, and maybe that's why horror movies are so appealing, because they always suggest that evil is real,
Yeah.
but the line between what you can and can't see is blurrier than we have to, in some ways, in contemporary life, that we have to pretend is completely opaque. As
Yeah.
you say, like the other cultures don't really have that privilege.
Yeah. It makes me, and for anybody listening to this who might be like, oh my God, what are they talking about? Like, go back and listen to the episode we did about the
Family systems
psychologist.
therapy.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Because I like at post that podcast, realize I know people who do that kind of therapy, and that is a real thing. And they have had those experiences with the critters. I mean, like it's a real thing. Like and I wish it weren't, like I really do, because like my whole worldview is that it isn't, but I just think it is. So yeah.
Well,
And as someone who like has had an experience with an angel, we can talk about all the Dolly Parton. I referenced that this week at work. We can talk about all the darkness, but like my friend Joe Ananias said, suffering is everywhere, but so is God. And so we can talk about the darkness. We have to remember like the light overcomes it. And those things are also there. And we should also be talking about those
God
things.
answers prayer.
Yeah.
And that's honestly, this next piece we're going to look at begins with just such a story. This is an interview that David Marchese did with Anthony Hopkins, the actor Anthony Hopkins, who's 87 and is releasing a memoir. And so Hopkins is a very, very interesting character if people know about his story. But the interview opens with this. Marchese says, "We all have turning points in our lives, but you have such a specific one, a moment that changed everything for you. Can you tell me about what happened on December 29th, 1975 at 11 o'clock? This is Hopkins. "I'm always slightly reluctant to talk about it because I don't want to sound preachy. But I was drunk and driving my car here in California in a blackout, no clue where I was going, when I realized that I could have killed somebody, or myself, which I didn't care about. And I realized that I was an alcoholic. I came to my senses and said to an ex-agent of mine at this party in Beverly Hills, 'I need help.' It was 11 o'clock precisely. I looked at my watch, and this is the spooky part. Some deep, powerful thought or voice spoke to me from inside and said, 'It's all over. Now you can start living. And it has all been for a purpose, so don't forget one moment of it.'" Marchese says, "It was just a voice from the blue?" Hopkins responds, "From deep inside me, but it was vocal, male, reasonable, like a radio voice. The craving to drink was taken from me, or left. Now I don't have any theories except divinity, or that power that we all possess inside of us that creates us from birth, life force, whatever it is. It's a consciousness, I believe. That's all I know." He goes on to say a bunch of very interesting things. He gets to a point. "The idea that life is a game and there are no big deals is a recurring theme in your book," Marchese says. "But what should we take seriously? What does matter?" Hopkins, "I don't mean to be irresponsibly indifferent to everything. There are monstrous difficulties in life, and you take notice of them. But finally, approaching 88 years of age, I wake up in the morning going, I'm still here. How? I don't know. But whatever's keeping me here, thank you very much. Much obliged. I had a gift when I was a boy. I could learn lots of Shakespeare, poems, and all that. Now at this age, I look at those poems, and they bring back clear memories of my childhood, and I get very moved by it. I get tearful, not through sadness, but through the wonder of having lived through those years." Marchese says, would you call any of the films you've made important? Hopkins says, "No." "Not one?" "No." It ends by Marchese saying, "Part of the reason I found the material in the book about your estranged relationship with your daughter, who he hasn't spoken to in 20 years, so painful is that it resonated with me for personal reasons. I've seen my father, I think, twice in 20 years, and I'm curious about other people's experience of that kind of estrangement. I wonder if you have thoughts about where reconciliation might lie between estranged parents and children." Hopkins says this, "My wife, Stella, sent an invitation to our daughter to come see us. Not a word of response. So I think, okay, fine. I wish her well, but I'm not going to waste blood over that. If you want to waste your life being in resentment, fine, go ahead. It's not in my ken. I could carry resentment over the past, but that's death. You're not living. You have to acknowledge one thing, that we are imperfect. We're not saints. We're all sinners and saints, or whatever we are. We do the best we can. Life is painful. Sometimes people get hurt. Sometimes we get hurt. But you can't live like that. I have no judgment, but I did what I could. That's it. That's all I want to say. He closes by saying, Sir Anthony, I realize I'm dancing around a question that I'd like your answer to. Do you think your life has had meaning? He says this: the only meaning I can put to it is that everything I sought and yearned for found me. I didn't find it. It came to me. I mean, a lot of wisdom in this guy, this old alcoholic. He's very, very vocal proponent of 12-step programs, by the way.
That's awesome.
He spans the gamut here. He talks about very different things. He talks about this experience, this spiritual experience he had. Then he talks about how he doesn't really take things seriously that other people take seriously, even about himself. And then he talks about having resentment and trying to live to it. And then he says this thing about meaning has been something that's come to me rather than me finding it. I don't know. Strike any chords with you guys?
He talks also, I listened, he was the weekend interview on the Daily podcast this weekend, and I listened to like the first 10 minutes, and he talked about his childhood and being a pretty terrible student, and his father just always being disappointed in him and getting after him. And then he somehow he won some acting contest, and he'd never acted before, and he had no idea. And then suddenly he had something to do that he was really good at. And within a few years, he was, acting in stage plays and then movies, and the whole thing just kind of swept up in it all. And I think there's a real sense of wonder and gratitude about how it all came together. And as you said, in a way that he just kind of fell into it, especially coming out of such a hard and painful place as a child. So it's a consistent story all the way through. We talk a lot about play and, seeing life as a play and taking Jesus seriously, but not ourselves, and it being a game. And it's not exactly, he clearly takes some things seriously. I don't know. I struggle with that. I struggle with taking things with the appropriate amount of seriousness. I'll to be honest with you. I envy his sort of the playfulness with which he seems to wander through life a bit, but gosh,
it's linked to this wonder though. He's like, I can't believe I'm still here.
Yeah.
He says thank you though. He has his gratitude has a direction.
It does,
and I think he talks about God. He calls it God.
Yeah,
and he also talks about being sort of drawn to church in ways that he can't really account for. It's very, and Laurence Olivier's funeral and all these sorts of wild things.
Wasn't he C.S. Lewis in Shadowlands? Wasn't that him?
I think so. Yeah.
I think so too. Anyway,
he plays a lot of these serious characters. I mean, that certainly take, but he doesn't. He sees it as entertainment, which I think might be a little bit of a cop out. But it's still got to take him at his word here. Sarah, what do you think about all this?
I don't actually think what he's saying is all that exceptional. I think we think it's exceptional because it's Anthony Hopkins. I think he sounds like a lot of men that reach that age. You're kind of just like, here I am. And maybe you're like, here I am, Lord. And I'm so grateful for this day. I really appreciate being around people this age for that reason, because they don't take a lot of things seriously at this point. God bless them if they do. And they are such a pain if they do. But for the most part, they don't. And they've kind of let go of even family stuff. Like, I don't have any control over this, and I only have this much time left. And I think every other episode, it's like an advertisement for church. But like, if you want to hang around wisdom like Anthony Hopkins, just go to a church, because it's there. There are people there that actually talk like this.
Come to the Thursday morning men's group at Holy Trinity West.
They will remind you that it's not that serious. They will remind you that you're lucky to wake up in the morning and that the grace is given and not earned. I mean, like, that's, hang out with old people if you want to hear stuff like this. So Anthony Hopkins is truly remarkable, but I think what he's saying are things that like we don't hear a lot, but they're very easily found.
Yeah, there's a degree of serenity even about his broken relationship with his daughter. That is, I've done what we done. We messed up. We weren't perfect.
Yeah,
we've done what we can to wave the olive branch, and it's not. We can't really control this situation. We can't we've been as intentional as we can be.
Yeah. I mean, not to ruffle feathers, but like, listen to Garrison Keillor, read Paul Zoll's book. There is a lot of wisdom to be found in being that age. And one of the great sorrows of my life is like, my parents never got to experience that age. Like, they never got to get to that point where they could just put it all down. Right. And like, feel like they couldn't do anymore and they've done all they could do and they're so grateful for every day. Like that's such a beautiful vision for the end of life. So
I like it. I mean, I think God willing, people get to this. There's also people who age in a bitter direction,
Yeah.
and kind of a withdrawn direction. But I think that
for sure.
when you see people who've, I think, are familiar with addiction and kind of have been forced to confront their own
Mm-hmm.
pain and their own limitations, I think you do see quite a bit of this. I was at a recovery meeting yesterday with someone from our church, and it was a room filled with, I have to actually confirm what you said, Sarah, and that it was filled with all sorts of the most everyday looking people imaginable, spouting absurd amounts of wisdom.
Incredible wisdom. Yeah.
And like there weren't too many graduate degrees, shall we say, but there were a few. And even those
Right.
people, there was no sort of sense of all that stuff. They just sort of said none of this really matters when it
Right.
comes to what matters is God
Right.
and recovery and
And my
love.
powerlessness over the situation, right? I mean, that's all
Yeah.
he's sort of saying.
The spiritual life.
Yeah.
We're going to end here with something you wrote, Sarah. I hope that's
Mm.
okay. I'm going to read some from the end of it. You've already alluded to what you wrote. You wrote a piece. This is a great title. It's a Beautiful Day to Yell at God.
Such a
Sarah
funny
Condon
meme. It killed the
on
meme makes me
Mockingbird.
laugh every time. Okay.
Very funny meme.
Yeah.
We'll link to the piece. You can see
Yeah.
the meme in there, but I wanted
Yeah.
to read the end part of it. You said, this is who you were talking about, Joe. I work with a guy who has ALS, and we went around the room asking for prayer requests. He said simply, I'm excited for the work ahead of us this fall. And I remember thinking, when have I ever thought that about anything? He also said once that if suffering is everywhere, then so is God. I am someone who easily remembers that suffering is everywhere, but forgets that God is there too. Lately, I've been missing my mother profoundly. It comes and goes, and right now it's a lot. Our family went to the Crystal Bridges Museum in Bentonville, Arkansas last week. It was magnificent and also heartbreaking because it was one more place Mom always talked about visiting and never did. I walked around staring at art and thinking about her. It was overwhelming. They call it Stendhal syndrome. I rounded a corner to see a stunning Dale Chihuly sculpture, one of those glass sculptures, and I stood underneath it. And seemingly out of nowhere, 3 women my mother's age started talking to me. I love your whole thing, one of them said. I was wearing one of my Pueblo dresses that Mom loved in turquoise, her favorite color. We found out that we were all from Mississippi. And the unwritten rule of my home state is to try to make as many connections as possible. Their innocent, where do your parents live now, turned into tears for me. And they stood there with me while I cried in the middle of an exhibit on putting up exhibits. I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried. I wish I could say it was the universe, but the universe is a cold, dark place. It was God finding me in my despair, wiping away every tear, turning towards me and saying, I'm here. I've been here the whole time. All right, Sarah. Tell us a little bit more about this experience and what you were trying to get across, or any thoughts you have after writing it.
Yeah, it was such a bizarre experience to be in the museum because it is, if you guys haven't been to Crystal Bridges, but we brought down the median age significantly. I mean, it is definitely a place a lot of older people were there. And so it was hard to not look around. And it was all these groups of women my mom's age. It was hard to not look around and be like, oh my God, she would be here with her friends and she would love this. And there's like a very distinct, like, I call it like the Santa Fe middle-aged woman look that my mother definitely had too, where it's like almost a little bit Western. Sometimes they wear cowboy hats and, they just think they are chic as hell.
Some Native American
Who cares?
some sort.
Who cares?
Little pendant.
Is this Chico's?
Beaded belt.
A little Chico's thrown in, and they just all had that thing. And I encountered these women. I mean, they really did come up to me, and I love Josh because he was sitting there too. And it was like, he knew what it was about. He just kind of backed up, and like let them surround me, and was also probably terrified, but he let them surround me. And they were so, it was like, immediately I was like, oh, God sent me my mom. This is my mom showing up. Like, it felt like the veil had been broken for a moment. And there were these 3 women there. And it was a whole conversation. Like, one of them said, well, how old are your children? And I said, oh, they're, 11 and 14. And then another one said, well, I want to meet them. Are they here? And I was like, yeah, they're here. They're outside. And then one of them said, is the 14-year-old so difficult? Because my grandson is so difficult. And I said, he really is. And she's like, well, sorry, Neil, if you hear this, we have our moments right now. And she said, what do you do? Like, what do you do? My daughter has a 14-year-old son. She doesn't know what to do. It felt like my mom was checking in on me. Swear to God. It felt like my mom was checking in on me. It just totally and I could not stop crying. And I was like, I think I'm done at the museum. But yeah, I just feel like I feel like it's just, the Episcopal Church ruins a lot of phrases, but it does feel like these are thin places for us, where everybody's gathered together and pushed up against each other, and you're looking at art and you're having these profound experiences. So, yeah.
The line blurs. It's so well written too, Sarah. Bravo.
Oh, thanks. I mean, yeah, and I just have to say that Joe is the best person to see every week at my job, because Joanna and Ice, because he will pull me back. Like, I'll be like, oh, right. You know what I mean? Like, we're so lucky to be here, and this is an incredible place. And also, let's laugh together, and that's a real gift. So,
because ALS is a degenerative disease, right? I mean, it's
for sure. Yeah.
He's you watching him go downhill, but with this joy and this excitement. What a gift. RJ.
I'm jealous, Sarah. That's an amazing moment. I'm trying to think of the last time I felt like God showing up in that particular way, just hold me, I don't know. I don't quite know what to say. I think men probably have a tougher time.
Yeah.
That level of vulnerability and intimacy and
yeah.
Yeah, and I think I guess it's an age thing a little bit as well. Like, those women, they have nothing to prove.
Yeah, and I would say to you, because I had a tough relationship with my dad. I know you did with yours, and I would say I don't see a world in which I have this kind of an experience with my dad. Like, that would be very, you know what I mean? I actually had a dream recently that my dad, we were standing in front of my childhood home, and he said, I'm just so proud of everything you've done. And that's the closest I'd get. And I couldn't tell you if that was him or that was just me, always wanting him to say that to me, Yeah. But that's the closest I'd get. So, yeah.
That's what literally every person on earth wants to hear from their father.
Oh, my, just want, just once. Yeah. You could just say it once and we'd remember.
And the lack of it leaves a mark.
Yeah, it does.
Leaves a wound. So
it does.
If you're a dad, just tell your kids over and over again that you're proud of them.
Yeah. I have it's like a couple of different stories like that. I was, first of all, this summer when I was so infirm and depressed about my leg, and I couldn't really do anything, and I couldn't really be a functional father in any meaningful way. And I had to, but I got the opportunity to take all my boys back from camp. All three of them were coming from camp, and we were driving down from Vermont down to Virginia. And I was like, what can I do that would be fun? Because there's nothing I can do that would be fun. And all of a sudden, at the exact time when we were having the kind of, it had gotten pretty ripe in there, and the boys were getting on each other's nerves. We were passing Hershey, Pennsylvania. And I thought to myself, we've always talked about going to Hershey Park and seeing the chocolate place. And so we pull off, and I don't tell them where we're going, and they're trying to guess. And all of a sudden we're at the world of chocolate, and I can just hobble there. There's a spot right in front of the place that I'm able to park as a handicapped person, and I'm able to hobble in. And they once we get in there, they give me a wheelchair.
Yes,
the ride. And the boys are like, "This is incredible," because we get to skip this long line and go into this ride. And while we're on the ride, they hand us like bags full of Hershey's chocolate. And the boys, after we leave, they're like, that was amazing, because we had left like an hour later. And the only way that would have ever been accomplished was if I was infirm. And it was like, I thought to myself, this was God showing up to show us that he cares, not just for my kids, but for me, who felt like such a failure. And we also got hot fudge sundaes for free because I was,
listen, it's got perks.
There you go. I should have gotten, I made a mistake in not, they had a Jolly Rancher scented candles, the watermelon kind. I should have gotten one, guys. I'm here to tell you, I'm
glad you have a little regret.
That would have been good. They also have like Jolly Rancher bath bombs. I thought that would have been cool too. So sometimes God is, three ladies in kind of post Yellowstone dress.
Yeah.
And sometimes
he's three boys in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Hershey, Pennsylvania, where everything is
love it.
Coming up chocolate. Okay. Well, thank you guys for talking today. I hope you do and everyone who's listening had a wonderful All Saints Day and Halloween, and hope to see as many of you as possible in Charlottesville in a couple weeks, and then we'll record real soon. God bless.
Sounds good. See you
soon.
Guys. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening. Remember, you can find us on the web at www.mbird.com. And we'd always love to hear from you at info@mbird.com. Audio production for the Mockingcast is provided by TJ Hester. And if you like what you've heard, please drop over to iTunes and leave us a rating or review. Until next time.